You know what? Screw it. We'll go until one of us is forced to stop. Ruby it
Yeah.
is.
Well, I mean, I already looked at some of the first Ruby set of cards, and Ash Harpy was changed
Oh
dramatically, and
wow.
I'm not
No,
so happy.
no,
I
All
no.
liked
right.
older Ash Harpy.
Arena
Oh my
Brawler.
god.
Arena
Why? Why would
Brawlers
they do
Okay,
that?
well, hold on, we're not
flavorless.
there yet. We should start at the beginning. Let's
Yeah.
see.
Let's
Okay.
start with
Two,
Arena Brawler.
two for
2 for 3-1.
3-1,
Eh.
and it says some crap. All right, we're done with that.
Yeah.
Ash Harpy,
No, well,
why?
Oh
Arena
my.
Brawler. What is it punching? Like, is it punching a fish person, or like I
It's
know
punching
it's supposed
another
to be another
orc.
orc, but like
Its
such
head,
a
It's
weird
its head
it's
picture.
is
one hell
up.
of an uppercut.
Its fist, yeah, its fist is what you see that looks like a
How
fish,
how
and
did it possibly
its
get
chin.
like that orc must be so much taller than the first orc. Like, and then he's like reaching up. Like, he couldn't possibly reach up much further. I don't know. That's a weird picture. Arena Brawler is actually pretty good though in limited. I would think.
Yeah,
Like, if you're
he
going
is.
super
Yeah.
aggressive, like it's pretty good. It fills a lot of roles for you.
Arena Brawler,
Definitely.
good aggression, vanilla creature, Ash Harpy, Rage.
Ash Harpy, I mean, Rage 4
Is big.
is not bad, but still 5-2 threshold 0-3 is not making me happy in my pants.
Well, no. What's not making me happy is it lost its ability. Like, the ability
Right.
it had was unique. There were no other cards that had that ability yet,
I
and
agree.
it was kind of a combo card. There were some interesting things you could do with it. Like you could discard on purpose to with the card I was spoiling last week, shrewd manipulation, as well as a few other things. Like, it did something other cards didn't, and that's always something I like to see. So for them to go and make it like super rage bird is, I don't know.
I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that the 5 for 0-3 Flight Rage 4 isn't bad in and of itself for what it is. Maybe not something that needs to be rare, but I think they need to take what Ash Harpy is. They need to give the sucker a new name and new art, because
Yeah.
it's not the same, and it doesn't. Ash Harpy before fit its effect. It came back, or maybe make
From
something
the
new and
ashes.
call it a Phoenix Harpy
Yeah.
or something like that. But
I mean, maybe we'll
It
see
needs
the
to be a
set
little
two.
different.
I mean, it could be
Yeah.
one of those things that they actually moved that card to set 2 and they just replaced it with this card instead because they wanted to keep set 1 more or less simple. I mean, this is still a good card. Rage 4 with Flight is very strong. 5 is a bit high, but I mean, it's fine. I really liked the old Ash Harpy.
Yeah,
but
me
there's
too.
one other thing about it. Boobs.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
Big
right.
boobs.
It is also my favorite art of the set, just hands down.
It'll actually be a really
you
beautiful
guys are so
foil.
bad.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the foil and the I figure she's flying, so there should be jiggling involved. So
You know what? It takes a lot of time to program breast physics.
that's,
They have
that's
other-
true. Well,
they
we
have
don't-
other
don't
things
to
to
be
focus on.
realistic.
So
All right, so assault technician.
5 for 2-1. Ooh.
this guy's new.
Yeah. When this troop enters play, create a warbot and put it into play. 2. Target robot you control gets permanent +1/+0.
Interesting.
I guess they had to push his cost up there to not make him. Oh my god.
Still,
So
a 2-1 is hard. I mean,
well,
great
yeah.
you get a
what's a
warbot.
warbot? A warbot's like is it a 3/3 or a 5/5?
A
I think it's a
warbot.
3/3, right?
Yeah, it's a 3/3.
So
And-
I mean,
And
Yeah,
it's target
you're getting
robot,
decent.
so I think this guy might be really fun in PvE because you could have it target your mercenary, who can also be a robot with B-boop.
well,
And that
I
might
think
be
what also
fun,
works,
but I think
what
he's
works
just,
nicely for PvP is like, so he's getting you basically 5 attack and 4 defense worth of power, which is a little below curve. Actually, it's a lot below curve because he doesn't have evasion, but he actually kind of does have evasion. If you have a bunch of robots that are attacking, you can choose like whichever one doesn't get blocked is all of a sudden going to hit for a bunch of damage.
Right. You can just
Yeah,
dump all your
he's
mana into
alright.
it. Yeah, that's true.
Granted, like on turn 6, like if you're curving out perfectly, it's going to hit for an extra 3 damage, and you're making a low value play in that you're having to commit like attackers that you wouldn't normally commit. So I don't know. It's a little wishy-washy, but he's not horrible.
I want him for 4. That's the feel that I want. Is I want him for 4. I think he would
I
be.
mean, I think he would be very strong for 4.
He would, yeah, I would make him a 1/1 for 4.
Sure.
And he would still be pretty good. Yeah, he would definitely be really, really strong at that. And
I mean,
I would, yeah.
before we can start changing their values around, though, we'd really have to think of what other 5s are there and what other 4s are there and all this other crap. But I
Totally.
think just for in a vacuum, straight up, I would be much happier with a 5/1/1 or a 4/1/1 rather.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we know 1/5 was Ash Harpy. May she rest in peace. And we know another 5 happens to be the Avalanche Giant. So he is a 5 for 2/3. Tap, choose and discard 2 cards. Deal 4 damage to target troop.
I hate that card.
Yeah, I
me
don't think
too.
I like him.
Like, so my card last week was Shrewd Manipulation, which is discard 2 cards to exhaust a troop or artifact or ready one, which is obviously the only time you're ever going to use it is a combo card. And this guy, like, discarding 2 cards to get removal is like, what 2 cards are you discarding?
Yeah, what do you want to give
after
away?
playing a 5-drop, like, you're throwing away 2 resources, but once you've played a 5-drop, like, you probably don't have any resources in your hand, so you're throwing away a card that might actually do something. It's like this. It seems like negative card advantage all around.
Yeah, I don't like him. You know what I do like? I do like Baby Yeti.
I actually like Baby Yeti a lot.
I like the hell out of Baby Yeti, and I'll tell you why. So this is actually a World of Warcraft story. I played the World of Warcraft trading card game back in vanilla, and this reminds me of a card called Kagura of the Crossroads. She was a 1 for 1/2 speed, and this is very close to it. And it makes me want to make a Baby Yeti deck.
So I don't know what Crossroads card you were saying, but I had a card in Magic called Kabira Crossroads, and it's responsible for the only turn 1 legacy win I ever had, which is kind of awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. But Avalanche Giant, all I was going to say is, if it said deal damage to target troop or player, I might start thinking about it a little bit more.
Sure. And I mean, under some circumstances, when you have like incredible card draw somehow, some way, and you just have a ton of cards to waste, all right, Avalanche Giant might be okay, but I don't like him.
Yeah.
Well, especially in Ruby, I mean, any card that you would keep in your hand for Ruby's most likely decent removal, and you wouldn't want to trash it for 4 damage. I mean, would you give up 2 burns for 4 damage from a single source? I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather play 4 copies of Ragefire before I ever included this guy in my constructed deck. I don't think we're even talking about including him in my constructed deck, though. I mean, in limited, he's still not going to be a card I want to play. But talking about Baby Yeti, like, it's nice to see Ruby get another 1-drop. It's nice to see a 1-drop with speed. Like, from just a design perspective, this kind of hits me in all the right places. Like, I'm happy with this card. From an art perspective, I'm like, what the hell is going on with this card? Like, he looks so weird.
It looks like he's throwing frozen poo.
He's a monkey. Of course he's throwing frozen poo. He's an ice monkey. He's an ice monkey. That's what Yetis are. They're ice monkeys.
He's an ape. Monkeys have tails. Apes do not.
His tail's behind him.
I don't see
You
no
just
tail
can't see
there.
it. It's behind him.
He may have a nub.
Obviously, you can't see it.
Apes have nubs.
At any rate, it's quite a good card. I like it too. I would probably play it in many different sorts of. Well, I'd play it in many different sorts of Ruby aggro decks.
But yeah, so Baby Yeti, what's his flavor? From birth, a Yeti's favorite activity is throwing things at trespassers. When there are no trespassers, they throw things at each other. They could have, give that second sentence a little more oomph, like more reference to throwing poop.
Sure.
Yeah, do we really need poop jokes though? And I'm glad someone agrees with me in chat that Yetis are apes. All right,
so for a 4-cost 3/2 Blood Crazed Zealot, 1 Ruby Threshold, an Orc Warlock with speed, and this troop attacks each turn if able.
This guy did not have attacks each turn if able, if I'm correctly, before. Well, he might have. I can't remember.
I don't know, but I mean, a 4 for 3/2 that's just meant to be a beater. He attacks every turn. He can't block. I mean, I don't know. He's fair.
All right. Well,
It's
you know what?
sweet.
It doesn't really matter because we're just gonna like. He's got a sweet fiery hand. That's kind of cool. Like
He
I
does
kind of
have
want
a
to.
sweet fiery
I
hand.
want to know more about how he does that.
Yeah, I think they need a better
I
art for
assume
that
insanity.
because
Like he's a warlock, so maybe that's it. But like, I want to know more about how that works. Like, I I want to know how to do that myself. Basically, is what I'm saying.
well,
Start by being crazy, I think.
Yeah.
Fire
There's
Claw.
there. Well, the flavor text is there's a shortage of blood for the mountain god. Like that right off the bat. There's more to it, but like that's pretty insane. You know.
Yeah, I mean, do you not know the flavor text of orcs and their mountain
Yeah.
god?
Yeah, they're all
'Cause
about the mountain god.
Yeah,
Well-
he's awesome.
You do know that Cogtepthel happens to have a pool of magical glowing blood towards the deeper recesses of his mountain where the high clerics are, and that any orc who seeks an audience with the high clerics must bathe in the blood before
Sounds like my
gaining
kind of party.
audience.
Right?
So the blood
Yeah.
crazed zealot helps fill that cauldron.
All right.
But we have some all stars coming down here with this next
Yeah,
one.
let's move on to the next one because there's some sweet artwork.
All right, so we start off with the Bombsmith. A 2 for 1/1. When this troop enters play, it may deal 1 damage to target troop. I like it. Good common.
I mean, he's not my favorite.
Yeah, you know, I think I'm gonna get myself here. Is initially I did a couple videos saying, you know, this guy's all right. After they've spoiled more stuff, I expected him to be worse, and he really is. He's kind of a trap. Like, what are you gonna hit for 1 damage that's actually gonna kill it? It is nice to be able to play him post combat and do that 1 extra damage to actually kill something.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're left with a 1/1. Like, that's the biggest thing is what you're left with. Like,
You can kill a baby yeti.
yeah, you can kill a baby yeti.
Or an arena brawler. Or
Well,
an
I mean-
assault technician.
I don't think he's a Ruby aggro card. I think he's Ruby control. He's there to take care of, he's the early counterplay to throw a couple stumbling blocks. He's
Sure.
there as a dwarf. You may run him in like a Sapphire Ruby combo, and he's still better than Sorrow.
Yeah, he's still better than Sorrow, like Chaos was saying. Like,
Okay.
I think I don't even put him that far. Like, the only spot I put him in is if you care about dwarfs, which is basically if you're playing the artifact deck, there's some that synergize with how many dwarves or artifacts you have in play.
Sure.
Like, this is one more. And so, if you can make this guy's ability do something, then having that extra dwarf all of a sudden becomes worth it. Like, you have to make both of those 2 situations do something for you in order to be even worth playing this card, for me at least.
Now,
Yeah, I agree.
would you take him as maybe a mid-level draft pick? Not like a first pick, but how far down do you think he'd be on that list?
For draft. So I think I put him, like, if I was already playing Ruby, I would take him in order so that I kept my colors open before. And I don't even know if that's still true. Like, I'm starting to downrate this guy a lot more than before.
Well, you know what?
I probably would take just about anything over him.
Not any. Well, I think there's a lot
I
of
did say
cards.
just about anything.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, he's definitely in my bottom third of card choices.
Okay, I think that's fair enough. Like, and he's still, like, for his... He's bad. For as bad as he is, he needs to be able to do that 1 damage to the opponent.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
I
and
mean, that would be
doesn't
help.
make him that doesn't make him that much better, but at least helps. It kind of like, at least it does a little bit for him because he's
If he could do 1 damage to my opposing champion, I would love to win games by dropping a bombsmith. I think
Yeah.
that would be fun.
that would be the bomb.
Now, we do have a fantastic
Alright.
card coming up next, and that is Burn.
Yeah.
1 cost, deal 2 damage to target champion or troop. Ninja.
Burn, burn, burn.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
efficient.
it's good.
Oh, goodness. Is this just the first time I've gotten a look at Burn to the ground?
That's the new card. Well, the new art.
That's the new art.
That's the new
And
art.
it's
Okay.
Awesome.
That is... Whoosh. Oh, that looks painful just looking at it.
Yeah.
It looks awesome.
So,
I love
what is that?
art.
Is that 1x? Is that what that says? Does it
Yeah.
always say 1x?
So
That's
my
what it
guess
looks like.
here is that you pay 1 plus X.
Yeah, they need to make that sucker
They
clear.
need to make that more clear.
I mean, it does kind of take it out of the cute little box that they have there. Just expand it out a couple spots and get that plus sign in there. It kind of needs it.
Just get the plus sign. Yeah, exactly.
But deal X damage to target champion or troop. We talked about this earlier. We like that. I like it.
I think
it
this
was
is the best
already. I mean, it's a great card, even when it was X damage and it didn't cost 1 as well. I'm kind of curious about just adding the 1.
I think they might have thought it was a little too powerful, and this is like a weird way to nerf it, like just because it feels clunky on like an artistic design and like templating and stuff.
Sure.
But maybe it was just like the best way they could come up with it for now, kind of thing.
Maybe.
But like, it definitely. I mean, I did the video. This was my number 1 uncommon, and I think it still is. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if there's almost nothing I would take over this, and I mean, including rares. There's a few rares I would, but this card is so flexible. It could either end the game by killing your opponent, or it could just be removal and kill one of their creatures.
Yeah, the having 1 for activation costs is fine. There's no real issue with that. It's fantastic. Draft it, first pick it, hate draft it if you get the chance to. It's a lovely card.
Don't hate draft. You're gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah. Hate drafting is not usually a good choice.
A good thing.
Well, but, this card should never even make it to the point of where you would be in a position to hate draft, honestly.
Exactly. So the 1X though, it does actually hurt the card quite a bit. I mean, it's a very small thing, but in some senses, if your opponent is playing troops on curve, you're going to always be behind curve, and you're going to have a hard time removing some of their troops. So it actually, like, it's a very small change, but it's a very big change also.
It seems to me like, though, the majority of on-troop or on-curve troops generally lean towards having weaker defense than offense in the cards that we've seen for the most part. So, I don't know.
I think that just says something towards their design for set 1, is they want people who are new to still be able to have a chance in a TCG. They want games to be a little swingy. They want people to, like, it be troop oriented, kind of just those ideas in general. And I think that's kind of what they're aiming for with set 1, and that's kind of why you see those, like, high attack, low defense troops.
Right. That does help burn to the ground in set 1, though, because it will keep you killing on curve troops for mana, the mana that you have, because generally they're always 1 less defense, except for when they're not.
Definitely.
All right.
Oh, this next one, we have a couple cards that are up my alley.
All right, so let's go ahead and bring it away. Function. Is it Cerebral Fulmination?
No.
Oh, it's not. So do you wanna bash this one before you go off on the next 2?
Okay. So yeah, I'll bash Cerebral Fulmination all day. So what it does is, at the start of each champion's turn, they draw an additional card. Now this is an interesting effect. Like, it's kind of weird that it's in Ruby the way they're going. It's actually really weird to me that it's in Ruby the way that they designed Ruby. But the idea is that your opponent gets an extra card before you do, and so like you're helping your opponent progress their plan more than you are your own, especially if you're not building anything into the board state. Like this helps you build your hand, but it doesn't help you build your board. And so they're able to attack into you even easier, and you're giving them more gas. Like, that's why I don't like it. It fits into some types of decks, and those aren't the decks that Ruby decks are looking to be.
You're actually mistaken about what this card does, though, because what it actually does is they play the card, I get a card, and then I play my 3-cost and heal for 2 after removing it, so they don't ever even get a card.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you draw your 3-cost heal for 2. Boom.
Cerebral Fulmination is totally a trap.
What are you talking about? I was about to get angry there. You totally got me there.
Y'all are right. It's a flat out trap. There's no reason you want to give your opponent card advantage for Ruby.
There's 1 or 2 situations where I would want to play this card, and the cards that I would want to play this with are not spoiled yet. And we might see them in a couple sets later, and all of a sudden this becomes like a Wild West card or something. But right now, this, like, okay, one idea I was thinking of, and actually I think this would be really interesting. I think it's kind of an interesting deck. It might be a little overpowering, is that last week I spoiled Shrewd Manipulation, and so that one is you can discard cards to exhaust or ready other cards. You would play that in conjunction with this, and then in conjunction with a card that says at the beginning of your turn, your opponents take damage equal to the difference between cards that you have in your hand and theirs. So like, there's a better way to word that. But like, if I have 0 cards and you have 5, you take 5 damage. And so I have a way to throw away my cards the entire time, and it's kind of like a combo deck. I kind of like that idea, at least.
Now, chat's got a couple nice thoughts in there of combining the booby traps and the recently spoiled Reginald with it. So the reason Reginald comes up and just whoops the tar out of him.
Yeah, I'm still saying that's a do nothing situation.
It's got great flavor though.
Yeah, it does have good flavor, but yeah.
But now we have Crazed Rummaging. Each champion draws 3 cards and discards 3 cards at random.
I kind of like this card in Ruby specifically because a lot of times Ruby's going to run out of gas before another color. So basically, you have an enemy that's holding on to 2 or 3 cards, whatever they've been keeping them. You play this crap. All right, you draw 3 cards, you lose those 3 cards. It doesn't matter. You didn't have any cards anyway.
Right.
But you've just screwed whatever they were planning on doing. So I like it kind of as an offensive thing.
I get what you're saying. I hadn't even thought of it that way.
Kind of a backhanded disruption.
They randomly might throw away their good card.
Exactly.
So, I mean, to me, this is kind of a combo card. And so is Crimson Clarity. But Crazed, like, at heart, combo decks are the ones I really enjoy playing. So, I can see some potential for this where you don't care, like, you just need to dig deeper. And this does that for you. It's really cheap. It's for combo decks, it's important that the cards are like really cheap, even if they don't get you card advantage. If they're negative card advantage, which this is definitely negative advantage, but it only costs 1 resource, so you might be able to dig deeper. You might be able to do what you wanted.
Mm-hmm. Crimson Clarity is definitely a fun card. I mean, you gain the threshold, you gain 3 temporary resources. Starts off on turn 2.
What are you planning to do with it, though?
The first thing that came to my mind when I saw it was Crimson Clarity a few times and then Rampaging Tarrasque.
No.
To me, that one, to me, that's just funny.
It is funny, but like, yeah, being able to do that on turn 2 or something is definitely, like, it's a nice idea. The problem with Crimson Clarity is you need to have something powerful to do with it. Like, this card, because it's so swingy, like, it's so inconsistent, like, you need to be doing something extremely powerful and extremely degenerate, like where your opponent just can't interact with you and you win the game on the spot. So like, Tarrasque, yeah, it'll swing in for 8 damage and do that, but it doesn't actually say I win on the spot.
Actually, really, this just works as a threshold fixer, doesn't it?
No.
Pretty much. I mean, I don't like it at all because it's basically gain 1 resource, gain 1 threshold. I mean, that's basically what it says. It's not very good. I mean,
now, but what about with our guy that totally destroyed all of the resources in our deck, though?
No, still not.
No, because you would only play that after you have the resources that you want. You wouldn't play it beforehand.
The problem with this is it's not good enough. It needs to give you 4 resources, or it needs to cost 1 and give you 3, or it needs to cost 3,
0.
give you 3 and draw a card. Like, there's a bunch of different, or cost 0 and do what it does. Like, it's not good enough.
All right, let's move on to Demolition. Basic action, 3 cost. Target champion loses 1/1.
This card actually, and an entirely unrelated note that has nothing to do with this card's power whatsoever, and I mentioned this earlier, the extended art really made me sad about potential extended art because it doesn't add anything to the card at all whatsoever. Like,
Yeah.
I was really sad when they spoiled that extended art because it kind of I was always expecting like some crazy twist on the cards, and that's probably I shouldn't have been expecting that. I doubt that was a requirement of all their artists to do something weird at the bottom. But I don't know. It felt kind of sad to me.
I like what you're getting at there. Like, so, my problem with The thing I would say to that is like every card can't have a twist, or else they're not really twisted. Like it can't be M Night Shyamalan. Like
Sure.
Oh, what a twist!
Even
Yeah,
even
like-
without a twist, though, it could expand on what's going on in some
Yeah.
way, and I feel
Totally.
like Demolition didn't do that at all either.
like what I think is kind of weird is so with extended art, like you just naturally see the art going down where like the text box would be. I kind of like the idea of like the whole card moving down and you see what happens above that too.
Sure, that would be great as well. Yeah, we should probably mention that to someone because they may not have thought about it. But yeah, it's scoping up instead of down. That's a great idea.
I like that a lot. Because like the main thing I'm thinking about here is like exactly what you were saying with Demolition is extending the art. Really, what you're getting at is you want it to tell a story. And,
Exactly.
Yeah, and so like Fiendish Kabbalist, like how do you possibly put that down, like go downwards and make that tell more of a story?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
He could be holding a small, white, fluffy kitten.
Like actually, the only thing I can see there is like, hey, you want to buy a watch?
So, I guess about Demolition, that what the card actually does, I don't care for it. I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's good enough to use, honestly.
I think it's got a spot. What do you think, Mokog?
Being able to destroy and push them back a turn is cool. For 3, I think it's a little expensive at the moment. Unless I can find a way to cheese it in, or cheese it multiple times to really push them back to be debilitating. But I know, like, if Corey had somehow pulled this off against the Orc deck on the stream, when you get, resource screwed on here, having this push you back after you finally get the resource to start playing your cards is just a downer. So I think if it's well played, maybe. But
if it removed Threshold, it would be fine. I mean, I really feel that. That's all it needs.
If it would remove Threshold, yeah, it would be way stronger because then you'd be able to color screw your opponent and do stuff like that. I think so. I kind of get what Mokog was saying is it feels a little overcosted, and I don't think I definitely wouldn't put it at 2. At 2, it would be way too strong. There's just no doubt about it. At 2, it would be insane. But
and
like,
you know what
if it was
I think I
target
would...
champion loses 1/1 and takes 2 damage, I think that even might be too strong. So there's some kind of sliding scale you can put on there.
I mean, removal's really hard to balance as well. I mean, or resource removal specifically is very hard to balance in general, and I appreciate because I feel like they're going. I feel like this is a softball. I feel like they're throwing resource a softball for set 1, and I get that. I understand it, but I mean, just the threat. I feel like Threshold is really what sets this game apart from Magic.
Agreed.
And I feel like that we should be messing with Threshold at least, maybe even instead of the resource. Like I would prefer this was just moving a but then again, then this is still good versus a monocolor deck. If you're moving a Threshold, you're really just screwing the dual shards and 3-shard decks.
So I don't think we should be messing with your opponent's Threshold in set 1 just because like you don't want to piss off a bunch of new players kind of, and sometimes that happens with these kind of cards.
Sure.
But I think this has a spot in like tempo decks. And so, I mean, like I was saying, I love combo decks, and probably my next step is just tempo decks where you're not necessarily doing something strong, you're just doing something strong enough, and you're stopping your opponent from doing what they were planning on doing. And you get in the win because like you just got in that that time window, you got in that perfect opportunity and took it. And Demolition kind of helps you do it. It's a horrible late draw. Like it does absolutely nothing for you most of the time at top deck mode, but early on, the thing is early on sometimes it's completely and absolutely useless. Like this is a card that's what I like about land destruction is like people are like, oh, it's so good, it'll screw me out of the game, but like it's really inconsistent. You're willing to take a risk at that point.
The way I'm looking at Demolition, and I'll make it quick, is I look at this and like land destruction, it requires its setup and is devastating when there's a combo. So I look at Demolition and I go, a form of this is going to get broken in set 3, but until then,
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah, so like it really the most important thing with land destruction is to ask yourself, what else are you doing? Like that always that's the most important thing to ask yourself.
Like if this was on a creature or a troop, I'd be happier with it.
Oh,
Like if
of
if
course,
it was
yeah.
a
If it
3
was a
for
4
1/1
cost.
that did this, I'd be all right with that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean hands down that would be even a 4 for that would be pretty strong. So
But you know
If
what's
it-
even better
yeah.
than that? Ember Spire Witch.
I'm sorry, which
Okay.
is alright.
I really like Emberspire Witch, and I thought that she was pretty. I mean, she's obviously strong. She's a 2/2 for 2 with Swift Strike, and champions can't gain health. I mean, I really liked her in some of our tournaments that we played, especially in a red aggro deck, a ruby aggro deck, because I had a lot of problems with life gain decks,
Sure.
just as an aggro, and I think she's an excellent counter to that. And she's on curve anyway, and Swift Strike, so there's no reason not to main deck her.
Exactly.
So,
That's what works well about her is she's not even a sideboard card, she's a main deck card, which is what makes her good.
And you know what? The 2 threshold, you just live with it. You don't care about splashing her. She's a 2 for 2 Ruby card.
If you're playing
Rock her.
mono Ruby, you don't care.
yeah, right. And I mean, that's what she's good in. She's great. It just, I mean, that she really helps a mono ruby aggro deck, and that's what she's for. And I think the 2 threshold is perfectly reasonable for her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a whole lot else to say. I think Swift Strike is going to be one of the more underrated keywords. It's actually, like, at least where I'm looking at it from, I think it's pretty relevant compared to a lot of the stuff. But yeah, she's definitely good, and she's good in the mirror match. If you're playing mono Ruby against mono Ruby, like Swift Strike is backbreaking.
Most definitely. Fiendish Kabbalist. I get where he's coming from.
I get where he's coming from too, but I would just say we can move on. There's not much going on here.
Yeah, I mean, +1/+1 for every card your opponent has on you for card advantage.
He works well with that cerebral fulmination that I shot down, but he's, in my opinion, I would just say he's too cute. Like he doesn't like what he does. Other cards can do better. Like why aren't you just playing Claw the Mountain God, which can swing in for 5 without your opponent having a bunch of cards?
Agreed. But you know what? We get to revisit the Furious Taskmaster. Give
She's the one
Orcs
with
some
the boobs, right?
speed. No, this is the one
No,
with
Dang.
he's got
non-boobs.
It's like a guy, he's got like moves.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah,
right.
he's
I was
he's
thinking of
definitely
the
got
Gladiator. That's the one I like.
he's definitely got some
Which
pectorals.
somebody corrected me on in a video. I was like, I kept saying he, and then somebody's like, it's actually she. I was like, oh, it is. I was never
You
paying
can
attention.
tell
I
from the
fail.
giant boobs.
Yeah, clearly.
Oh, we have a gem crazed berserker, a new another socketable miner,
Well,
a 3
before
for
we do
3
that,
2.
Furious
we should-
Taskmaster got buffed.
Yeah.
He was a 2/2, or he was a 2/1 before.
Yes, he was. He's now a 2/2 for 2. And honestly, I like him a lot. He's great. He's fantastic in a Ruby aggro deck.
I definitely underrated him. Like when I initially looked at the set, I was like, I don't want to play this card. I just want to play a 2-cost guy that does something. And even without him, even when he was a 2/1, I was definitely not valuing him as high as he should be. Him being a 2/2 versus a 2/1, I don't feel like it really makes any difference.
No,
Like,
absolutely.
almost none whatsoever.
I am sorry that you undervalued him because he's fantastic. He's phenomenal. He's great in a Ruby aggro deck.
All right, so it's called when you see this guy and you wanting to go for Ruby aggro, draft him, grab him, use him.
He's good. Even our Ruby Blood aggro.
Sure.
Now we got the gem crazed berserker, a 3 for 3 2 socketable miner. Is he worth the 3 spot?
I mean, he's a socketable miner, and he has more health than some the other socketable miners we've seen lately. So, as a socket card, he is defaultly pretty good, just for the versatility.
Speaking of default, my question that I always ask myself, I think this is really a good benchmark for the socketed cards. What if you use the Sapphire Flight one? That's what I always ask. Is he good? So is a 3/2 with flight for 3 good, I would say yeah, that's pretty good. So I mean, like, I think that's just gonna always be my benchmark. Even if I'm not playing Sapphire, at least I have something to judge against, and so that, for me, that makes this guy decent.
And that's a really good strategy most of the time, but sometimes just having that socket in a slot that you don't have good cards for is just good, even if the socket is all that's making it good. I mean, sockets are extremely
totally.
versatile.
Yeah, I think the thing with sockets is you got to find a good way to personally value what you like. Yeah, just figure out where sockets fall value wise for yourself, and I think the flight one is a pretty good metric.
All right, but now we have a 5-drop. The 5/4 5/3 crush giant army ants.
Well, he's a common. The thing here is I want him to have another ability and be like an uncommon or a rare.
Yeah, but I guess he's pretty good at teaching crush on the commons.
Yeah, I think we see him as a common for a lot of reasons, and I think we're going to have him in a lot of drafts. Like, I think that he's going to be a pretty regular staple 5-drop draft card.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be one of, like, since he's in Ruby, I kind of see him being like one of those cards that you're not picking highly, you're not excited about, but you're including in your deck anyways, just because like
Right.
he fits.
Gotcha.
Right. I mean, once again, Ruby aggro, he's a pretty good 5-drop. He's got crush. You're not gonna get that anywhere else, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't like that he's 5/3, but I mean, there isn't much to do.
Yeah, I mean it's not the end of the world.
All right, but
So-
now we have Gore Seeker. 5 for 3/2 Swift Strike Rage 1. So I guess, when it strikes, it's a Swift Strike that's a 5 for 4/2.
A burnable 5-drop is never something that I ever want to pick.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
Oh goodness,
And
especially compared to
like-
what we see right next to it.
Yeah, like, what does this card do? Like, when are you, I guess what I'm saying is, when are you really excited? Like, oh yeah,
I mean,
I got
Swift
5
Strike
Gore
Rage.
Squeakers.
Swift Strike Rage is great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fantastic. He's just a two defense is
Yeah.
not okay for a 5-drop.
The
But Heatwave.
Heatwave, yeah,
is
Heatwave looks
actually
nice.
a crazy card.
Extremely.
This is
Yeah.
another card that I almost kind of think they should have saved for set 2. Like, let that set 1 meta develop, because this is like one of those cards that just hoses some decks. It just shuts them down so hard.
It shuts down Goreseeker as an example.
Well, it like beats the Shin Hair. Somebody was saying that,
Shin-Hair.
and yeah, like it beats a lot of, like, it actually beats a lot of the Ruby aggro decks, a lot of the Blood aggro decks.
I mean,
like,
also
and
it
it's-
only costs
and it's really
2.
cheap.
yeah.
Like you could hold 2 of these in your hand, just waiting for like, their 4th drop when they're about to do the weenie
Yep.
deck, and just be like, wipe the board. It's not an
Yeah.
extinction.
It's-
It may
it's
cost me an
pretty
extra
strong.
card.
It's really strong. Like, think of when you would rather have Extinction and when you would rather have Heatwave, and like a lot of the time, like, I guess what I'm getting at is, how often is Heatwave gonna basically be the exact same card of Extinction but 2 resources cheaper? Like, how often are you gonna be able to sweep their entire board with Heatwave?
Sure.
Like, that's gonna come up. There's gonna be plenty of times where that's relevant, and like, for 2 resources, this is a strong card.
Yeah, I really dislike. Okay, because you got burn, one resource for 2 damage to a specific troop. You've got this 2 resources for 2 damage to every troop,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got burn to the ground, which they felt like they had to minorly nerf. I don't know. It just seems.
That
I don't
sure, it hits your own troops, but like, if you're building right, even in limited, that's not
Well, if
going to
you've
be a
got
problem.
these cards,
Sure.
if you've got these cards, you're going to be ready for that. You're not
Yeah,
going to
you're
be
not
putting
gonna
all
be
your
picking
troops
Goreseeker.
down. Yeah. Well, you're not going to be playing Goreseeker right before you play it, at any rate.
Yeah, of course. So like, I like I was saying earlier, I kind of wish they held back the big guns as far as like hate cards went. until some further sets. Like, I like this card. I think it belongs in some sets. Just like I really love that Brave Howler. I think
Sure.
it really belongs in the game. But they're not the cards I want to see right out of the gates.
No, I agree with you at 100%. But I mean, also they can't only appeal to new players. They have to be appealing to Magic players. They have to be appealing to players that are old hats at this. Like, you saw how excited you got for that Brave.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I got
they
really
want that to happen. So it's very important they do have these cards. I'm really just kind of glad that so far I've only seen a couple of them, and
Yeah, me too.
they're more or less pretty rare.
Yeah, so like that Brave Howler, to go back on it, like that's a card for the last couple months I've even been saying, this card would completely change the game if they printed it. And then now we see it and you're like, yeah, this completely changes the game. But that doesn't I think it would be more interesting to see it later on. But
Of course, now that they have it this early and it's going to have such an effect for such a long time, we're not going to see it for like 2 blocks afterwards.
yeah,
I mean, the only card that I'm really glad that I have not seen yet is an exhaust for like draw 2 type card.
Yeah.
Like, that needs to come out, and a lot of things will require that for its combo, but it needs to not come out this set for sure.
Yeah, you and I had talked about that a little bit the other day. I mean, eventually we'll see it. But
All right.
say
So-
some of those they're not mechanics wise unique to Hex. Like, they're cards that could just be in any game, and they're kind of staples within games. Like, every game needs to have them at some point. Save that kind of stuff for later. Showcase all the like really cool Hex stuff. Showcase that in set 1 and 2.
Well, I tell you what, we're really running across the socketables in this part of Ruby.
Yeah.
Because
Speaking
now we got the
Hex
6 for
showcasing.
4/4 socketable miner that pay 1, give +1 attack this turn. Surprised they didn't name the sucker Cerberus.
To be honest, I like this card. It's a little weak, just straight up for a 4/4,
Sure.
but the minor socket is phenomenal. I mean, granted, it's on a major socket for 6, which is kind of sad, but still, minor socket's great. And the 1 for +1 damage means that you're gonna be killing something, getting chump blocked, so that you don't have to do the damage. So
It passes the flight test, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I'll think about this. If you put the flight gem on this one, you
it's
play it
actually
down.
quite good, honestly.
Yeah, you
Swinging
come
in
across
for-
with him.
on the next turn. You're swinging
Yeah.
in for potentially 10 damage if you draw a resource 11. Like, your opponent's dead. Like,
Yeah,
there's no
like he's a
question.
game ender right there. We're talking limited bomb. Might as well call him Bombosaurus Rex or Bomb Hound.
I would have liked if they called him Cerberus though.
So
I would think they could have too. So maybe they'll have a bigger one that's Cerberus later.
yeah,
That's
if this is a
that's
Hellhound,
their,
how
engine
big is
for
their Cerberus?
Their deck building games.
Also, it's not really Cerberus because it looks like it's got 3 different animal heads.
No, I don't think so. Well, like
No?
a hyena, like a
Yeah.
dog, and like a mad
Kind of-
dog.
A cat or
Kinda
something.
canine,
The middle one I thought was like
that's,
a cat,
That's
It kinda
canine,
looks like a
that's
cat, I guess.
feline, and that's
like a pig or
Okay.
something.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Okay.
kinda
I'm with you.
baddish.
Yeah.
all right. So, Imp Hoodlums, a 3 for 2/2. When this enters play, destroy target opposing artifact.
This is a card I'm glad to see.
Some artifact hate.
Well, not artifact hate. It's just like a conditional removal on a body. That's what I would call it.
I know. This is the second or third artifact hate we've seen so far, right?
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
So
Maybe it's not very common.
makes me wonder if they're really worried about Argus's coming down. Hi, my 12 hit the board on turn 6 because I drew it in my opening hand.
Wait, what were we talking about?
The 12 cost artifact that reduces its cost every turn.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, in Podlums, in limited, it'll be pretty decent. You'll maybe want a copy in your main deck if it like. Honestly, a 2/2 for 3 isn't the end of the world if you have one or two of those in your deck, and you don't even if it never destroys an artifact, it's not the end of the world. Like, playing that is fine. It's not powerful, but it's fine. But second,
I like
pizza's
this.
ready.
Imps don't destroy machines because they have any particular animosity towards them. towards dwarves. They just
Just
enjoy being annoying.
That's great. Yeah, that's good. Um, I almost feel like maybe it should be a 2-1 with flight, just because they're imps. Like it feels like they should have wings, but then they don't. They don't have any wings in the picture, so
Sure.
it works.
Not all imps have wings. Now we know.
Insight Fury. What do you guys think?
Well,
All right, Insight Fury. I like it. I mean,
really?
Rage 2 on a thing is quite good. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know if I would ever play this card ever.
you know, I think
I mean,
when it comes to Incite Fury, it all depends on your creature quality. And if you put Rage 2 on something that naturally has Swift Strike, like the Ember Witch, or something that has evasion, like one of our Blood counterparts, I think it works pretty well that way.
the biggest problem with Insight Fury is it costs 3.
Yeah.
It's competing with all of the best cards, basically.
Yep.
But I like the card, but you're right, it probably won't go in very many decks just
You're
because
just gonna get
of where it's costed.
You're gonna get 2 for 1 all day long. Like that's
Sure.
just that's the first problem. The funny thing I think about this card is that it's a basic action, and there's literally no difference of whether this card is a quick action or a basic action. Sure, you could play it at the end of your opponent's turn and use up your resources that you weren't gonna be able to spend anyways. But like, then you could have just played it during your own turn as a basic action. Like, I don't know. There's just some funny aspect to
You
that.
could throw it.
That, like,
You could throw it on an Ash Harpy and now have a Rage 6 Ash Harpy.
Rage.
And but you won't be able to get it back
Sure.
when you play 2 cards. It's
Sure.
like, oh,
Another pretty good. I mean, you're right. You're always gonna play 2 cards because I mean it's just an aura. It has to go on something. But I mean, there's some pretty good cards like the what's the name of that stupid guy? The guy that's 0/4 and gets attack based on
Sure.
its defense. I mean, there's
Sure.
a lot of like beefy guys. I wouldn't mind having Rage, so especially if I can give them Steadfast or something, so they can block and attack. That would be nice.
Yeah,
But you're
I'm
right.
with you
I
there.
mean, it's just because it's really the problem is it's in 3, and there's so many other good 3-cost cards.
all that, and I just feel like you're gonna get blown out a lot of the time you play it, because it doesn't even buff the troop until it actually attacks. Like I guess that's where I'm really seeing the big drawback.
I think I like it as an introductory card though. And
Definitely,
that's why I
yeah.
like to think of it as. You know, we have a lot of introductory cards. You can tell there are a lot of cards that are going to be in starters. This is one of them. But you know what's not an introductory card? The card to the right.
I think the Legionnaire of Gwaer is actually a pretty strong introductory card to Hex.
Yeah. No, I
Just
agree.
because it does a lot for Hex, you know?
Yeah, this card does a lot, and within one card, it accomplishes quite a bit. It introduces you to the Inspire mechanic. It makes players, as they're new, want to build decks that have more Inspire mechanics within them and kind of understand better deck building, all kinds of stuff. And I don't know, Gwaer, do you agree? This was the strongest card out of Gen Con?
It definitely made that deck seem like the strongest deck. I would say that, yeah.
I never lost or won a game like when this was played. Whoever played this always won. Whenever I was watching a game over people's shoulders, like, they always won when they played it. Like, it was just backbreaking. Like, this, well, that was part of it because at Gen Con, like, the meta game was kind of wacky too. There weren't a whole lot of cards available.
I actually survived this card quite a few times on my life gain deck that I played a lot.
Okay.
But it's a very strong card. I will give you that.
I had a turn where I was hit for 23 damage off this card.
Oh my. That's
That's
quite
a lot
bit
of
damage.
Inspires.
Yeah, well, it wasn't all off this card. They swept my board, gave this guy speed off of Lord Alexander. He swung in for like 8 damage on his own, and then everything else that was in play killed me.
Sure.
Rough. Well, speaking of Lord Alexander, he's our next guy right here.
And he got a big buff. Oh
Did he?
boy.
Yeah, 3 for
I'm
3
looking for,
3.
I'm actually watching this on the stream, so I can't see it come up until it refreshes on the stream.
Sure.
So I'm like, I'm just excited as you guys are.
He
Alright.
actually, I don't know. Maybe he didn't get a big buff. Go ahead.
Yeah, because he's a 3 for 3 3. Inspire is another troop with cost equal to or greater. Enters plan to your control. It gets permanent speed. Uh, I mean,
I
still
don't
pretty
think that was
solid.
buff.
It's on curve.
So before he was a 3/1, but he had speed.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. I miss his speed.
Yeah, I kind of like him having speed more than being a 3/3.
I mean, I like the 3 better just because I really hate, if you haven't guessed now, less than 2 cost defenses.
Yeah, no,
but
I'm totally with you there. I'm with you there 100%.
Well, at least now we know Alexander survives the heat wave.
I
The big
really
thing-
feel like I liked the fact that most of the inspired troops before had the thing they were inspiring, and it
Yeah.
feels like they've moved away from that. Like I feel like several cards we've seen now don't that did. So I don't know.
Like, yeah, I agree totally. Like being able to give your 4-drop speed, especially if it's something really strong, or if you're ramping into a 5-drop, give that speed. Like that's nice, but he should have speed.
I agree.
All right, now Mancubus. I'm seeing something new here. One shot, basic,
That's
and the
not new.
4 cost. Now, tell me what this one shot is, because I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Basically, once per game, ever, this card can do that effect. As a basic action, it can spend 4 to gain control of target opposing troop with attack less than or equal to this troop's attack.
So this
This
is
guy
their...
is freaking incredible. But only if you are playing a inspire deck and
Okay.
are buffing his attack. Like,
yeah, I was about to
it's
say
very
I
conditional,
don't know, but
incredible.
yeah, it's conditional totally.
But
What happened?
in the proper deck, this guy can be extremely good.
Yeah, he can definitely be good in the correct deck. Like, yeah, it's definitely important to mention that conditional part. What do you think happens if you revert him? Do you think you should be able to get another activation out of him?
I don't think...
Okay.
he doesn't change on there,
According to what
so I
I've
don't
told-
think you could revert him, could you?
According to what I've been told, you would get that back. But I don't know that they were thinking about this one-shot effect because it's the only one I know of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But according to what I've been told, the card reverts to exactly what it would have been if you had just played it fresh for the first time. So, in theory, you will get that one-shot effect back.
Well, then
Yeah.
that works really well with the synergy with Diamond, since they have the 1 cost revert target card.
Yeah.
Oh well,
There's a lot of
Mancubus.
potential there.
Stealing all of your troops up in here.
Yeah, so Mancubus, I think the parts where I'm not too excited about him is it's a basic action, so you can't use it until you untap again. He starts out as a 2 power, so you kind of have to have a second effect in play to make him be able to take something, which makes him
Lord
a little
Alexander,
slower. Yeah.
you can play him immediately. You can drop him down as
Sure.
a trick.
Well, you can't though, because you also have to pay 4 resources, which is the next
That's
part
true.
I'm not too happy about him. Is so the next turn you take one of their guys in exchange for 4 resources, which isn't bad, but it's not the greatest thing in the world either, because at that point you're really paying 4 resources for something they paid maybe 3 for if they were on curve, and you're probably actually taking something closer to what they paid 2 resources for. So you're like, you are removing one of their guys and getting one of your own out of it, but it's a pretty big cost.
I mean, you're right. I really feel like it is also card advantage. I mean,
Yeah,
even though
no,
it's
definitely.
a big cost, and that offsets that quite a bit. Especially, if they have a card that's important to whatever they're doing, and you take that away from them, and then you force them to have to kill it. I mean, that's another card that
That's a
they're
big
going
deal,
to have to
yeah.
play. I mean, so I really feel it's very conditional, but this guy can be amazing if you play him in that sort of thing.
And the important thing there is like cards that are important to what you're doing are generally low power. Like if they're either attacking for a ton of damage or they're not attacking because they don't have a lot of attack and they're doing something else that keeps them worth playing. So yeah, he's going to be able to take out those like I don't know Buccaneer commanders or something.
Now our next one, on the other hand, Ragefire. Lovely escalation, isn't it?
Yeah, Ragefire is, I think, the quintessential escalation, and we will likely be seeing a core set because of it.
How do you mean?
I mean, I imagine that once set 1 or block 1 rotates out, they will reprint a card that is Ragefire
Oh,
as far
yeah,
as the next block.
totally. Yeah, I think we'll definitely see like a core set where just escalation is a core mechanic, and like there's like 5 cards in every color that have it. That would be really cool. That would be my kind of set, actually. I don't think many other people would enjoy it once they actually got their hands on it, but that would be all about. That's what I'm kind of all about.
We all like it, draft it, love it. I don't. Is there any time that what would you pick over Ragefire?
There's actually a decent amount. Like in
Yeah.
limited, it's not all that strong actually.
I mean, he's right. The odds of you drawing it enough to make it an amazing card are very low. I wouldn't be relying on it unless you also have drafted some way to tutor it or something that you're pretty sure you can force it to be drawn. But I can't think of very many ways to do that other than the Transcended.
Yeah. So I mean, in limited, like it's still removal. It's still good. I would, if it was like this or burn in the first pack, I would probably actually still take burn. Like it's going to be the card you want a majority of the time. That's close. Ragefire is still pretty good, and as far as
I would
value goes,
probably
yeah.
take Ragefire over Burn, even though it costs 1 more. I would probably still do that.
It's definitely close. Like in Ragefire, definitely it's going to be worth something. You know, even like 3 years from now, if they don't reprint Escalation, it's going to be a card that people want to have access to.
For sure.
Alrighty. But now we have the Rampaging Tarrasque, the 5 for 8/1 5 threshold crush speed. Crush and speed.
I have a love-hate relationship with the Rampaging Tarrasque.
I think most people do.
I really like the idea of it, but
I want to give it Swift Strike. I want to find a nice, good way to give it Swift Strike.
Yeah, I mean, like, so we have this Ruby Enchantress on the right, which could give it Swift. I don't think it should have Swift Strike on its own. That makes it pretty good. But, yeah, what were you going to get at?
Yeah, I don't know. I like it as a card, but I don't like the card. I don't know how else to say it.
It's so fragile. Like, it's just one of those cards where it's like, sure, you play it and sometimes it wins the game, but then sometimes you were like, the only chance you had to win the game was to play this and hit them with it, and you just get blown out time after time.
Yeah, there's just too many ways to remove this that are quick actions. I'm pretty sure Rampaging Tarrasque. No, it's still -1/-0, isn't it? I was gonna say Rampaging Tarrasque loses to Sorrow.
No,
but no,
it's still better than Sorrow.
Still doesn't do anything.
So there's Rampaging Tarrasque, which is funny because it dies to Pack Raptor all day long.
All day.
Yeah.
All day, every day. And now, I guess if they both have Swift Strike, they hit at the same time. But
yes, if they both had Swift Strike, then it would be fine. But you still have to, either you have to have the Ruby Enchantress out, or you have to throw a Ruby Aura at it. So
yeah, and at that point you're still 2 for 1-ing yourself.
Exactly.
But on talking about cards, Ruby Aura is actually a card I think is quite good. Like I think it's actually very, very good.
Quick action Swift Strike, combat trick Swift Strike is phenomenal.
And to get a +1 attack.
And it's permanent.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yes, it is quite good.
Like yeah. So this is a card like if you're playing Ruby in draft, like even if you're not playing Mono Ruby, if you're like Ruby Sapphire, whatever you're playing, you probably want 2 of these in your deck.
Sure. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
And actually in Constructed, it's still a pretty decent card. Like being able to, the problem with a lot of the Ruby decks I think is that a lot of their early cards fall off very quickly and suddenly become like pretty useless. But if you're able to attach Ruby Aura to it, especially as a quick action, all of a sudden they're back in the game.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Ruby Aura is a common you're not going to readily sacrifice to crafting.
Well, sacrificing crafting, we don't even know how that's going to work. I mean, common, you're going to do that all the time because you're going to, if you're drafting, you're going to have
right. Once you have 4, you don't really need to worry about them anymore.
And it's not going to be a common that ends up being worth more than a penny later on in the timeline. Like if it's gonna be worth something, yeah, you'll hold on to it. But Ruby Aura is not one of those cards. It's gonna be a card that there's a even if it's not the same card reprinted time after time, it's just a very similar effect. You're gonna see this card
Right.
more than once.
Well, and if you think about it from the comments based on the idea of PVE. So if you're trying to run on the free to play side, you know you're gonna trade something for those early Ruby Auras if you're not wanting to spend money. And that's I kind of look at it and I go, you know, I'm going to be milling all the commons I get from the PVE, because supposedly that you give the cards to the Void Society gives you materials, and with the materials you craft. But you wouldn't want to do that to your PvP cards unless you were constantly drafting and having those influx of cards. And that's one of the things I think will be interesting on the game is for PvP players, all of our commons are going to be going to the PvE players through either the auction house or trades or crafting.
My thing, I think if you want this card, you'll be able to buy it off the auction house for a penny. Like
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the auction house is where you're gonna get any single card you want. You should be able to go there, especially for commons. You should be able to get them for nothing. Gold.
Like, honestly, like this is something I really wish people would understand about free to play games. And I think people like there's something they're wearing like the wrong hat or the wrong color glasses. Like I got to get everything for free. Like, why are you wasting 5 hours of your time to get like a 2-cent card? Just go buy the 2-cent card. Like it, you know, when you're trying to grind stuff for an in-game currency and then trying to transform that into something within the game that you can use, like why don't you just buy the card? That's just
I agree.
You know, that makes sense, but one of the things to take into consideration on that is, one, some people really do enjoy grinding. They are rare, strange birds, but they're out there.
No, I mean people do for sure.
But then, but the other part is that some really do face a paywall. So, you know, if you're the college kid bumming off the school internet and you need something, and you just don't have the money to go, you know, you're going to do what you can, and you'll grind 3 hours because it's your leisure.
Well, my only comment on that is go get a job. Like go work at McDonald's and you'll be able to buy the entire deck after working for one day.
Yeah, honestly, you don't
that's
even
all I
need
gotta
to
say.
get a job. Just go pick up change outside. Really, I mean,
Yeah, like it's
some
not
of
that
these
hard.
cards, you get one plat. You should be able to buy all of the cards of them you need with that one plat. I mean, it seriously should be like that on these commons.
As long as our platinum is divisible down to 100, I believe you are correct.
Yeah, I
It
hope so.
honestly doesn't even need to be, because these commons should be selling for gold, and you just turn that plat into like 100,000 gold, that one single plat, and you buy all of the cards for that gold.
If somebody really needs Ruby Aura, I will give them Ruby Aura. They can have mine.
You heard it here first, guys.
Yeah,
Please send tell
you
the
guys can
function
have
for
the
Ruby Aura.
Free Ruby Auras from Function.
Well, and in that case, let's move on to an uncommon, the Ruby Enchantress. So a 3-for-2/1 Inspire. As a troop with cost equal to or greater than this troop's cost enters play under your control, gets permanent Swift Strike. Fragile. I like giving things Swift Strike.
Yeah, but it's also gonna have, you know, a Kraken on it, so it'll be at least a 2/2 if you're playing, you know, Inspire decks. I don't know. I like it. I think adding Swift Strike to everything, even if it is a 2/1, that's gonna force them to use removal on a 2/1.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
It's going to
good.
force them to burn it, to rage fire it, to heat wave it. It's going to force their removal.
Yeah, like if you even give 2 troops Swift Strike off this, you got some pretty good value. Even if it just like dies in combat or something, like you are in really good shape if you gave 2 troops Swift Strike off this.
I agree. I like
I
it.
agree.
We'll see how it runs. Until then, let's move it on down to Ruby Lance.
Oh, I just want to say about Ruby Aura, he's like the like the pose he's doing is like, yeah, bro, like
Yeah!
They're just yeah, it's just so funny. Like the size of his horns maybe, or the size of his face.
Yeah.
There's like he's
He definitely
really
is funny
pumped.
looking.
He is pumped and ready to rock.
Yeah.
So Ruby Lance, 3 cost, 1 Ruby threshold, quick action, deal 1 damage to target troop for each threshold you have. I am not in love with this card. I never really have been. I know a lot of people like it, and I I can sort of get where they're coming from, but
Yeah.
it is not my favorite card.
I'm in the same place. Like it has its place. Like the card is good in some styles. It's not, but not across the board. Like it's, it sometimes it's going to be a really good pick for you early on, in like your third pick slot if you're already double Ruby cards for 1 and 2. Sure, you'll be playing Ruby Lance, but the thing here is what it really belongs in for me is a deck where it's heavy Ruby splashing X, where 75% of your cards are Ruby, because otherwise, like, you're just running the risk of it not being enough, like it not actually killing the troop you wanted, or them playing like a pump spell and then you get 2 for 1, or there's a whole bunch of scenarios with Ruby Lance where it's just not quite enough. It's good that it's quick action. It's good that it's 3 cost, so it'll get there. It's just you got to be careful with it.
I always felt that Ruby Lance forced a mono Ruby so that as you were going later in the game, you were able to start taking out the bombs with this card.
I would say yeah, if it could hit the opponent, but since it can't, I think it's pretty flexible actually.
That's the other thing I miss, is that I miss it not being able to hit the champion.
I'm glad that it can't though.
What can I say? I like burn spells being able to hit champions.
It would be a little too swingy for me. I think like I sometimes it's better to just keep things simple.
Yeah, I
Now,
agree with Function on this one. I mean, honestly, it's a necessary card for people that are going like heavy Ruby burn. Like you need more actions that are dealing damage to things, and in that kind of deck, it's great. But
You have to keep the
I don't
board
think it
clear.
needs to do champion. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be doing champions either. It's strictly board clear.
All right, so speaking of 2 more like strictly Ruby aggro cards, I mean the next 2 kind of fit into that category at least a
Definitely.
little bit.
mm-hmm. You want to introduce him, Gwaer?
Sure. Ruby Pyromancer's a 2-cost single threshold for 2/1. Its Inspire is any troop with a greater cost gets +1 damage. I ran this in all of my Ruby aggro decks in our intra guild tournaments, and I want to like this card, but it's one of those like Adamantine Scrivener. It's nice when it works, but a lot of times I find myself not having it out or waiting a turn in order to play this and then play another card, which is just a bad idea when you're playing an
Yeah.
aggro deck. So, I mean,
So-
it's a good card. It's a good effect. If you can get it down on turn 2 and then play something after it, that's fantastic. But it just often doesn't work that way.
I think some people are gonna fall into the trap of like, since this is a card that the longer it stays in play, the more value you're gonna get out of it. Like the more troops you play after the fact, the stronger those further troops get. People are gonna be afraid to actually attack with this troop and lose it. I think that's kind of a trap. Like you have to be willing to lose this guy. Like at the end of the day, it's a 2 1 for 2 that every once in a while it has an upside that it buffs your guys, and so I think that's the best way to look at it. Like, sure, anytime you have a chance to get value out of something, you want to, but that shouldn't be the be all end all. You shouldn't be so concerned about getting value out of something that you didn't just go for the win and get in there for damage.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think you're right. I think for a lot of people that are new to TCGs, not that really anybody's going to catch us saying this, but is anytime you draw a card like this, and what Gwaer was saying was, it was underwhelming, or in order to make it work, you had to make like a suboptimal play. Is when you draw it, think of what card you would have rather had than this one, and then start including that in your deck instead, and just seeing how it works. So even if it wasn't the card you drew, even if the card isn't in your deck, just say, oh, I would have rather had Howling Raider or whatever it's called that gives Orcs haste, and then
Sure.
start trying that out, and maybe all of a sudden that's the card that you actually needed in the deck.
I think I know why Gwaer actually played him. Boobs. She's
Boobs.
got plenty
I mean,
of boobs.
Also, you know my weakness.
Oh, I do. See, you're going to be playing the
Savage
boobs
Raider,
card.
on the other hand, you cannot make that mistake with, because it doesn't give you the option anymore. It attacks whether you like it or not, and it is a really good one drop. At least it used to be. There have been some other pretty good one drops these days, but I still like this card.
I like him a lot too.
I like Savage Raider's good. I'm not sure if I would pick a Savage Raider over a Baby Yeti, because I like the speed on the Baby Yeti.
Okay, I every once in a while you're gonna rather have had the Baby Yeti, but I think most of the time you're gonna rather have had the Savage Raider.
You know, because I think about it, I'm a one drop. I can run in and I can swing for one immediately. Turn 2, I'm going to swing for another. Savage Raider has to wait till turn 2 to do the 2.
You're probably not going to trade that second turn, though. You're not going to trade the second turn. He's just going to get blocked, and you're not going to kill the guy.
Yeah.
This guy, you don't get the first attack, but you either get a second attack, or he probably trades with something.
Yeah,
which is good.
You always want Savage Raider over the Baby Yeti, in my opinion, too. Because here's the reason. So the Baby Yeti, turn 1, he swings in for 1 damage, and that's if you had him on turn 1. Like, the later the game goes, if you top deck him, at least the Savage Raider is slightly better, I would say. There's a few situations where the Baby Yeti is better if you have a trick or if you have a pump spell, whatever. But what I'm getting at is that when turn 2 rolls around, best case scenario for the Raider, you've swung in for 2 damage. Best case scenario for the Yeti, you've swung in for 2 damage. But the longer the game goes, the better the Raider was. So if you played a removal spell turn 3, the Raider has now hit for 4 damage, and the Yeti's only hit for 3. But like Gwaer was saying, turn 2 and turn 3, it's that much more likely that the Yeti just got blocked and only ever hit your opponent for 1 damage, and probably didn't even trade.
Well, now the other side of that, though, is that with the Baby Yeti, you can choose when to stop, where versus the Savage Raider, it gets forced into the chump.
Yeah, no,
so
that's definitely
I'd say that's the other side of it. If anything, it's still not bad to go turn 1 Savage Raider, turn 2 Baby Yetis, and go hit for 4. But,
yeah, that's not terrible by any means. And then you get blown up by that 2 damage to every troop, but these things happen.
Yeah. All right.
Plan
we
for
need
that.
to look at
No.
the Shadowblade Lurker, Necrotic Rogue, a 3 for 2/3. We've seen a version of this guy, haven't we?
We've seen cards that are like it. We've seen the blood card that's a 3/2 for 3. And I think really an important question to ask yourself is: would you rather be playing a 3/2 for 3 or a 2/3 for 3? And my feeling is most of the time in the Ruby decks, I would rather have the 3/2. So since they don't have access to the 3/2, that makes me not want to really play this card.
Yeah.
Also, he's a 3 and that is the most contested slot.
Yep.
He's got no extra abilities. He's just a 2/3 for 3, and we can do way better than this most of the time.
Agreed.
Starter material. Next card.
I mean, I wouldn't not draft him. Obviously, in a limited, he's probably okay. I mean, it depends on how many commons we have in 3 and what our drafts look like. But
He seems all right in like a Sapphire Ruby deck.
right. All in all, not a great card, but he's not a bad card by any means.
But he's only holding kitchen knives.
That's true.
Yeah,
He is.
I mean, if he's going to be a Shadowblade Lurker, give me some like World of Warcraft oversized super blades.
Yeah.
that's
There's something
just
too
me.
like about his hair and like his face. Like he almost feels like he belongs in a Michael Jackson video.
He does.
A little bit of
he
Thriller.
does.
He's got the Michael Jackson
Yeah.
vest.
a little bit. So Sniper Gwaer
Is fan-freaking-tastic. Unless
Yep.
they changed it. Hold on.
All right, so 5
No,
for 2/2.
it is freaking
Enters
amazing.
play, deals damage equal to the attack to target champion or troop.
I won a Gen Con game with this guy sniping the other champion for 30-something health.
Yeah. No.
And
Wow,
this guy's
nice.
he is freaking amazing.
So I think a lot of that revolves around a card we're about to talk about soon. But the big thing with Sniper Gwaer is like, I think it's in some senses an underrated common. Like, and every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's not that good. But I know it's good. But I just tell myself it's not. Like, there's always something in the back of my mind saying like, oh no, this card is garbage. But
I mean,
no,
it's a
actually
5
pretty
cost
good.
for it's a 2/2 for 5. That is not
Mhm.
good. Like
Yeah.
every sense of your brain should be telling you that is not good.
but
it is good.
It's that
Yeah,
it's champion or troop, and I think that's really the power of what hitting the champion is.
Yeah,
right there. Because
it
would you
either
like this as
kills your
much if it
opponent
was
or
just a
kills one of their
troop?
guys.
And honestly, even if it was just troop and not champion, this would still be a very good card. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a good card.
Compare this to Bombsmith. Like, that's actually an interesting comparison because Bombsmith costs 2. So, like, really, you're paying an entire 3 more resources to get a 1 more attack and 1 more defense and, like, hit for a little bit more. But, like,
and
it's
again, that's the
much,
hit for
much more than that.
a guaranteed 2 more. But once you start
all you need is 1
throwing
pyro
synergies on this, and you start getting value out of that synergy.
Yeah, Sniper Gwaer, like, the thing is, it's gonna be one of those cards where you're passing it because you're like, this card doesn't do anything for me, and then round 1 of the draft, you're playing against the deck that has like 3 of them and 10 pyromancers or something stupid, and just kills you on turn 5. Like, it's one of those cards where it's either like the best card in your deck, or it's all right.
Now, our next one is Suppressive Fire. I think they gave this one a new art, didn't they?
I don't know if we ever even
Maybe.
saw this card. Like, we saw the name of it, that it was a card. We saw, like, Suppressive Fire as a card, but I don't think we ever actually saw this card.
So this is a basic...
It's a 2-cost. It's a 2-cost basic action that stops 2 target troops from blocking. This turn. That is...
It's okay.
It
It's
might
hard
get
to
you
make it work. It's like one of those easier said than done cards.
It's you wish you had it when your Tarask survived a turn.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty great in certain situations. Like, you need to get this attack through. They have 2 really good blockers, or even just 1 really good blocker. I mean, it's a cheap card that you can stop something from stopping you. And there's a lot of instances that's good. If you have some, like an Ozawa or something that's like doubling your life, you have something that's drawing you cards, you have something that you really need to happen, it's good to be able to force that through. But just on its own as a standalone card, this is not something that I would generally run in a main deck or a sideboard.
No,
even,
it's
really.
not a sideboard card. It's really like either main deck or never. Like, it's a card where you need to be applying pressure when you're playing it. Like, if you have no board state and you're like only swinging with 1 guy and they have 4 blockers, like, they're just gonna chump block you. It's not like the greatest thing. But if you're playing this, like, the thing is, I see you playing this maybe on like turn 5 or something, and you take their best 2 blockers out of the situation, and now all of a sudden they probably take lethal damage. Like, that's the best situation for this card. And because that's such a narrow situation, if you're drafting it, you're only really going to want like 1 copy of it. Like, it's not something you want to play in multiples because there's so many situations where it's just not useful for you.
Right.
I concur. Let us move on to the row of fun. Sword Trainer. A 4 for 2/2 Inspire. As another troop with cost equal to or greater than this troop's cost under play under your control, it gets permanent +X+0, where X is this troop's attack. And as you were saying before, this is the card that makes Sniper of Gwaer really, really mean.
This is the card that makes pretty much every card in an Inspire deck really, really mean. And the fact that you play 1 Sword Trainer, all right, that's fine. It gets, +1/+1, whatever, from whatever other Inspire effects you have. It might be a 4/4 when it comes out. You play the next Sword Trainer, that thing is now, 6, 8, 9, 10, 10. It just increases so well. You play the next one, you're looking at 20 something. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic.
See, now I'm almost seeing the flip side of the coin, at least at Gen Con when I was, because this was in the Gen Con decks, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Okay,
It
so,
had a different art
this is
then,
the-
though.
This is the card I was thinking about then for sure. Colin and I were playing against each other. Either he or maybe one of the other guys. Yeah, I think Colin and I were playing against each other. And he ended up having a Sword Trainer in his hand that was a 4/2, but it costed 8 resources because I bounced it so many times. And that's my problem with the Sword Trainer is, like, it's clunky. Like, what cards are you actually planning to buff with it? And that's a really important question to ask yourself if you're playing Sword Trainer. is what are you playing after Sword Trainer?
Sniper of Gwaer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sniper all day. Like, Sniper will end the game. But if you're not doing that, like, there's a lot of top decks that just don't do a whole lot for you, is what I'm getting at, I guess.
Sure.
Like, Sniper
Sure.
Sniper has the good situations. My problem with Sniper is for every good situation there is with it, I think there's probably 3 or 4 where it's just not the card you wanted.
Right, and I mean, really, any card that has Crush or Speed will synergize amazingly with Sword Trainer.
Oh, for sure.
As long as it's, you know, a 4-cost plus card. I mean, I really think there's a lot of synergies for it, and honestly, it's just a great effect. The plus X is just so strong when it plays well, and when it plays poorly, it's still giving you, I mean, at base +2 for nothing.
Sure.
Which is nothing to sneeze at.
I think it's totally reasonable that Sword Trainer, like 90% of the time, is going to be a 3/2 at the very least. Like, you're going to have a Pyromancer in play or a Protectorate Clergyman, so like it's at least going to be buffing for 3, and I think that's totally reasonable to expect. So then if you're playing like that 4-cost flyer that has 2/4 and you're turning into like a 5/4 or a 4/4, that's great. You're in really good shape after that. So yeah, I guess Sword Trainer is good in that case. You just have to have enough cards that it's actually going to do something for. Because if Sword Trainer is at the top of your curve and you only are playing like 2 or 3 5-drops, then like Sword Trainer really doesn't belong in your deck.
Well, true, but then at that point, you got to ask yourself: are you playing an Inspire Synergy deck then, though?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just pointing out that like Sword Trainer has to have enough cards to actually be doing something for, because on its own, it's not doing much.
I've got to say, though, that 90% of the time, my number one card to play after a Sword Trainer is going to be another Sword Trainer.
Yeah,
followed by another Sword Trainer.
Yeah.
And then a Sniper of Gwaer.
Well, yeah,
that would be rough.
I think if you can always live the dream and not get hit with a burn or something like that. But having 2 Sword Trainers in play and then playing a Sniper is pretty insane, because like both of them buff it. So like the first one maybe was a 3/2 and gives Sniper +3, and the second one then would be a 7/2 and gives it so you're giving it +10 at that point. So now it's a 12. Like, you're hitting your opponent for... Your opponent's dead at that point. Like, there's no way to show him 10 damage.
And I mean, and that's 3 cards. That's 3. And the Sword Trainer just works with itself so well. It's just I like the card. I like it a lot. I mean, there are definitely some downsides. I'm not going to say play it in every deck for sure, but it's excellent in a synergy deck, especially if you do manage to get a couple of things off. Even if they burn one, you've still got another one. And more importantly, I mean, you can still get the buff from the graveyard. Even after that, they stay at their plus whatever they were. So I mean, it's really quite strong.
It's a pretty big deal. Like that, and you're touching on another subject too. Is like, even if they get the burn, like that's one of the things I just hate to hear from people. Is like, oh, it just dies to burn. Like, well, you know, if your opponent is all out of burns because you're applying threats the entire time and putting on a lot of pressure, it doesn't matter if it dies. Like, you're putting pressure on and they have no more answers. It's really a question of how many answers do they have and how many threats do you have. Like,
and when do they have them?
Yeah, exactly. So saying like it dies to X and stuff, it's relevant, but you know, what you're getting at is that like you're not just playing Sword Trainer, you're applying threats the entire time, and Sword Trainer is just part of that kind of package you're delivering.
Like, right. I mean, you have to deal with a Sword Trainer pretty quickly, and the best part is, even if you burn it, like I said, you can still get the buff out of the graveyard with the constant, so you still have that going for you.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah, that is a fantastic card. Like, you really need constant removal just for that. Like, you need that on your sideboard just for when you run into that deck.
So I will say this right now. I did not like Sword Trainer whatsoever. I don't know when I would ever play it before we have this conversation, but at least I'm starting to definitely see some of the upside, and I'll probably come around on that since pretty soon you'll see me in a draft and I'll be like, oh, Sword Trainer's the best card in the format.
Now, the next one we have is the Extinction of Artifacts.
Yes, this is what we were looking for earlier.
Yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier. Ben Stoll said he alluded to there being a card that had the text "Destroy all artifacts" on it somewhere.
I would have
when we were at
never
Gen Con.
imagined that it was a 4-cost card, though. In all of my days, I would not have guessed 4.
What would you have put it at?
I don't know. I just wouldn't have guessed 4. I would have guessed earlier or later, one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other, but this is in the middle. So
Yeah,
like,
this is
for 2, you can destroy 1 artifact and or a constant. So like that has more flexibility, slightly better in that regards. And for 3, you can destroy all the constants, but for 4, and well, for 3 you can also gain some life, but for 4 you can destroy all the artifacts.
Yeah, but it's got some nice flavor text. Sigh, if you must. We will just make more.
That's all right.
But the way I read that was I read it instead of make as nuke. Sigh, if you must, we'll just nuke more.
Yeah, that's not so bad.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that card against artifacts. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, sideboarded against artifacts.
So here's one to think of. Is like, so doing a lot of deck building, I finally just started to think of sideboarding now that like I'm able to kind of establish a little metagame of my own. And it's kind of a lot of, at least the deck building for me is now went back to what cards do I want to have access to in my sideboard? Not even what deck do I want to build, but what do I want to have access to in my sideboard? And then I decide what I actually want to build. So like a lot of times maybe I'm not even playing Extinction in my main deck, but when I was building the deck, I was like, well, this deck really needs to have access to Extinction somehow or another. So you're thinking of that. And, you know, there's going to be some decks which maybe I would imagine are a little slow. And they're like, well, I just need a way to deal with the artifact deck because it's also slow, but if it gets going, it just wins kind of situation, you know?
Yeah, there's one prediction that I would like to make about this card, and that is that I forget the name of that champion, but the mercenary, but the Kickstarter mercenary that makes all of your stuff artifacts is going to be huge. No, not Beboop. The other one, the one that makes everything an artifact.
Okay.
He's going to be huge in PV in the unlimited format, the Wild West crap, and his ability is basically he has a card that starts in play and he can turn that card into anything that he wants that's in his deck, and they just pull out like an ascended and then quickly turn him into a transcended, and suddenly he has a transcended out and he can pull out whatever he wants. But this kills all artifacts and all opposing artifacts, and he specifically makes every one of his troops count as an artifact. Yeah. And this will screw them up like hardcore.
Well, so there's that. One thing at least on our own note is he only destroys your opponent's artifacts. So at least that one-sided wrath is pretty interesting. To be completely 100% honest, I don't think, like, whether it said all opposing or just all, I don't think there's really much of a difference there. Like, you're either playing this card to hose your opponent, or you're not playing this card at all.
I mean, if you're playing an artifact deck and your primary weakness is another artifact deck, this card's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's artifact on artifact hate, too. They're going to love that.
That's a narrow window. It's still a relevant one, totally. It's definitely a relevant one, but, I don't think that's like the majority of the time you're playing this card.
Right.
That's probably not why.
Definitely not. I would probably sideboard it in though.
Oh yeah, you would never be main decking this card. But sideboard, it definitely has a spot.
Now I know a card Gwaer is going to main deck and all of his Ruby decks just for the boobs.
Right. Veteran Gladiator, she has been changed a bit. I don't know whether did she always attack every turn? I don't know. But her when this troop attacks, target opposing troop can't block this turn. Dropping this guy on 3 is crushing to an opponent. I'm telling you, this card is so incredible in a Ruby aggro deck. It is ridiculous.
It can definitely be backbreaking where it's like the game felt even until they played it. Granted, like you're only 3 turns deep. Like how one-sided you say the game was. But you play this, and the game, like, definitely slants in the Ruby player's favor.
Yeah, I mean, you hit all of your drops really well, like 1, 2, and 3, culminating in this Veteran Gladiator. I mean, you should have a speed guy out too. Not necessarily that you can give him speed because it costs 1, but still, I mean, she's so good.
Oh, that's too good.
Yes,
great comment. I enjoyed the comment.
Brack baking. And I can't believe that Function thought this was a dude. What does that tell you about Function?
I just didn't. I wasn't even looking at the card. I think I like heard Ragemonger, and whatever reason, like Ragemonger just made me think of some dude with road rage that like, I don't know.
Well,
I'm making excuses for myself. I don't really have one, but
we can look
but
at her
yeah.
boobs when we get Alpha soon. Till then, we have a new 1/1 that I do not remember, the War Machinist. So it's a 1/1/1, Ruby Threshold. When an artifact enters play under your control, this troop deals 1 damage to each opposing champion. He's artifact centric.
This is a card where I'm like, at some day, people are gonna say this card should be banned. Like that's not gonna be in like the next couple of years, but they're gonna be like, there's gonna be like tons of people on the forums who are like, War Machinist is just too strong. It needs to be banned. It's not fair. I hate playing against it. Like, it. This is the kind of card that asks for that.
I've got to say though, there was some interesting artifact cycling that we've already seen a little bit of, and this could be quite strong in that situation.
Oh goodness, you get Inspiration Engine going on.
Well,
Inspiration,
like,
Dwarven Turbine, Inspiration, Dwarven Turbine, Inspiration, Dwarven Turbine.
Not even that. Like, I'm just looking at like the Warbot Factory, like.
Or Workerbot Factory?
Yeah, Workerbot Factory. That's what it's called.
And
so
then Slaughter
the big
Gear?
Nuts and bolts.
Yeah, nuts and bolts too. That's 2 right there. If you have 2 of these in play, nuts and bolts is also hitting your opponent for 4 damage, which is a big deal. Like 4 damage adds up pretty fast. But Workerbot Factory, so when you play the factory, it'll hit for a damage for each machinist. But then the fact that if you have multiple Workerbot factories in play, they activate so easily. Like having 2 in play means you only need to be playing 2 more, and you get 2 more Workerbots, and like they chain together so well. The first one that you have, if you only have 1, sure it takes 4 to activate it the first time, but every time after that, you only need 3 because it activates itself, and so it just chains together. Like I can see this already chaining with Workerbot Factory.
Yeah,
especially
and dwarves can accelerate that too, can't they?
Yes.
So
we were talking about this the other day.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day. Is an artifact dwarf deck that it doesn't attack things.
Yeah.
And this is the enabler for that deck, that you just sit there and make artifacts and they die.
The fact that it comes out turn 1 is what makes it crazy. Like you play this turn 1 and then you do a bunch of things and your opponent dies. Like there's not that much else to it. Like your opponent needs to be playing that card we were talking about, the Total Meltdown. Like if they're not, like they're in trouble.
Oh, they need Total Meltdown or Heat Wave.
That's true. Heat Wave
or
would
Total
do a lot
Meltdown and Heat Wave.
So I mean, like this is gonna be one of those cards where it's just like, well, I lost to another War Machinist.
Love it. Build with it. Have fun.
That's gonna be fun. That's gonna be a fun card, I think.
I really like that that's a possibility, at least for Magic. One of my favorite formats was what was it? Shards Block Constructed. There was a card called Master Transmuter, and it worked with like a bunch of other artifacts. And it was a really 2-blocksy deck, and did all kinds of really fun stuff. That like those are the kind of things I like to do. And a lot of what Cryptozoic is doing with the artifact cards are those kind of like weird, random, chaotic effects, and those are the things I like.
Alrighty. Our next one is Wrathseeker, the dude with the tattoos and the giant belt. So he's a 3/1/1 Rage 2.
He's also got a giant axe. You could mention the giant axe. Like I don't know why you mentioned the giant belt.
Because Zoltog has a cooler axe than that one.
Okay, so now that we're talking about the axe, like look at his arm where he's holding the axe. Like
sure,
what's up with his hand?
It's
not like he's missing fingers.
He's just holding it with his pinky and between his thumb and first finger.
He only has 2 fingers.
Does he only have 2 fingers?
Which you know what this leads me to believe?
That
this explains everything. The tattoos, the missing fingers.
So this is the executioner?
This is the headless executioner.
God. He doesn't have a scarf though.
Well, he has to get the scarf later.
He still has his head. I think that's also a notable point. Like, he's just not the headless executioner yet.
Sure.
It's
all
just
right,
one industrial accident away.
Aside from this guy and his enormous codpiece, What else does he have going on?
A red gem?
Rage
No.
2?
He does have Rage 2. He's a 3-cost 1/1 with Rage 2. So he swings for a 3/3/1. He swings as a 3/1. And
You know what else he has going for him? He dies to just about everything. Like literally
everything.
everything.
You cough on him and his head falls off, he becomes the headless executioner.
A,
pretty
a
much.
baby Yeti throws snow poo at him, and he falls over dead.
Yeah. I mean, can you see playing this card and then some asshole comes out with a baby Yeti?
Yeah.
I mean,
You're like, oh, I guess I gotta wait 5 turns so I can find a way to remove that Yeti.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
It's like if the Wrath Seeker comes in at the most opportune time, he could get out of hand if they never have a blocker and they have no removal and their deck is sitting at 1 resource and they didn't mulligan.
if they
That's a
have
lot of
no
ifs.
cards, if they have no cards ever, he would be amazing. That's
yeah,
true.
I think it would be pretty great in that situation. Like, yeah, he's getting input faster than Ragebird, but yeah, I think he's one of those cards where it's just like, if he's in my deck, I'm probably not gonna win the draft.
I mean, I don't know.
There,
I mean,
as we discovered,
it's hard to
3-drop is a major slot. He's just not good enough.
Yeah.
to be fair, he forces removal. So I mean,
Yeah.
someone is going to have to remove your 1/1 Wrathseeker somehow, and
Or a Swift
he's
Strike
probably
guy has
going
to
to
block.
trade. That's
Yeah,
right.
he's
He's probably going
probably
to
gonna
trade
trade with
unless
most
they have Swift Strike. But I mean, he's not. I wouldn't, because he's 3-cost and it's just 2 contingents of a slot. I wouldn't see playing him very often. But I don't think he's a bad card in and of itself. I just think that 3 is just a really harsh place to try to fit things.
Yeah, and like, yeah, sure, he dies to just about everything, but on the bright side, he does trade with most stuff. And like Umaro was saying, who needs a scarf when you have a head to keep your neck warm?
That's
Well,
very true.
All right, our
well,
next one
that's
is
what all like the weird purple veins are for. They keep you warm.
all right. So our last one of Ruby happens to be our legendary Zoltog, 4/4/4/4. When an orc troop you control deals damage to the champion, create a Savage Raider and put it into play.
Yeah, this guy's fantastic with any of the cards that deal you damage per turn. I mean, you're basically dealing yourself Savage Raiders, and that's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Especially if you can give those raiders haste or pump them up with a pyromancer or something.
anything. They all have rage, for example.
Yeah.
There are so many good things that Zoltog makes go, and the only orc I think I like better than this guy is Teltaka,
Teltaka's great.
Teltaka, who is not in this.
She was
so
not.
there's that.
But so like the one I totally like, I really like Zoltog. I like the little like interaction there with the orcs that deal damage to yourself, and then they end up just cloning themselves, kind of thing, like you were saying. The one thing I would say nitpicky here is that Zoltog has to wait a full turn until you get those extra orcs off them from that type of damage. Sure, you can still play them and then attack with your guys. If they connect, you get extra Savage Raiders. So there's that. But it's just like, if what you're counting on is a Fang or a Claw doing damage to yourself, you have to wait a turn.
You know,
That's
Not
true.
the end of the world.
well, and I do like that we've got a main phase before attack right here.
Yeah, totally.
And if you've got, turn 1 you drop your Fang, turn 2 you drop a good orc, turn 3 you drop your
Veteran
Claw
Gladiator.
of the Gaul or Veteran Gladiator, and then Zoltog comes in on turn 4 because you went, like Ruby, Blood, Ruby on your shards, perfect
Here's-
draw.
Here's
That's-
the big one, at least in my opinion, is if you play that Veteran Gladiator on turn 3, it's very likely that if you played a 1, 2, and 3 drop, you're going to connect with all 3 of them on turn 4 and generate yourself 3 more Savage Raiders. Even if, now, on the next turn, even if all of your troops, except for 3, die, you're getting another 3 Savage Raiders, and then you're attacking with another 6. Like, you have to deal with that fast.
It's an amazing synergy with a Ruby aggro deck. He is phenomenal.
Yeah, when I built, I think my Ruby deck, I don't even know if he was spoiled yet. He probably was, but I definitely should have included him. That was my very first video I ever did. But one thing I like about this guy, so another, I mean, on top of all the gameplay mechanics, is we got to touch back on the flavor. Is he's really happy about his huge axe, and
Yes, he is.
I kind of like what Zoltog is saying here. It's not, it's not explicitly said on the card, but you tell that what he's trying to say is one day we can all become headless executioners.
One day.
Well, I think that's probably a nice sentiment to end on. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if I'm up for Sapphire.
Yeah, Sapphire is one of the more exciting ones. It looks like Friendlock got nerfed a little bit, but yeah, Sapphire might have to wait for another day.
Well, yeah, because this leaves us with Sapphire and artifacts left to go over. Now, do we think that we might be able to hit these 2 shards up before Gwaer gets his invite tomorrow?
We probably should try to aim for tomorrow if you want me to be a part of it. Or I suppose I can, sort of answer questions while I sit here mumbling about Alpha as I'm playing Alpha.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of...
Instead of doing anything.
Oh, what's Soltog? Oh yeah, I just lost to that. Oh, what's Ward Missionist? Oh yeah, I just lost that too. Oh, what's Sorrow?
Sorrow?
Oh, actually,
I lost to that.
I just lost to that, yeah.
Hashtag Gwaer's worse than Sorrow.
Gwaer's worse than Sorrow. You heard it here first, folks.
That's pretty
right.
rough.
No one is worse than Sorrow.
Yeah.
No one.
But
Don't
yeah.
challenge me. Don't challenge me. I can do whatever I want.
It's gonna happen. At some point, somebody's gonna play Sorrow, and it's gonna be like, guess what, guys? I just won. Sorrow was amazing.
No, the public service campaign. Just no. We're going to destroy it. Well, I guess before we cut off, though, we have to pick our favorite Ruby cards.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
We do. I think I can start things off. Let me do a quick scroll here. I gotta make sure that I'm not missing one, but I think I know what it is. All right, so for power level, I think I'm just gonna be picking 2 power level wise. I mean, like, we got cards like Burn to the Ground, which I've talked about already, and Burn, which are both really strong. But if I just had to talk about like explosive power level, that can potentially just that one card you play it, and it's more likely to win the game than anything else. That Heat Wave is just it is really strong. Like there's a lot of cards that buff the attack power. There's not a whole lot that buff the defense. And so just being able to deal 2 damage to every troop is really likely to be able to at least kill 2 or 3 guys if they have them out there. Like if you're playing that Zoltog, you're going to kill everything except for Zoltog. And then on the next one I just got to say is War Machinist. There, even if during set 1 he's not the most OP card in the set, like he has potential to just be a really stupid card. Those are my 2.
You know what? Hex Shadow is mentioning something in the comments that I think is true. There is a hidden Ruby card that we have to go get down here at the bottom of Sapphire. The hidden Unmerciful Tormentor. He made it into the set. The 1-for-1/1 that gets +3/+3 when you have no cards in hand.
How did he get in there? That's kind of weird. Yeah.
I think we have to blame an intern.
I have to say that our Ruby aggro decks generally were 2 flavors. They were everyone else that was running Unmerciful Tormentor, and me that was running the malfunctioning Warbot, and my deck was better. So I don't know what to tell you about that.
I gotta say, like, I get where Unmerciful Tormentor is good. I totally understand. Like, swinging in for a 4/4 on an early turn has a lot of potential. It becomes hard to remove, but there's those times where you draw a card, and because it's a basic action, it opens your opponent up to play a burn on it, and then it's gone, or just all kinds of stuff. I do think that there's a big impact since Zarlox is gone. I think he was like Unmerciful Tormentor's worst enemy, and now Zarlox is like a 5-drop or whatever, which is a bummer for me because I really liked Zarlox. But Unmerciful Tormentor has potential. I think the times it's good are going to be less often though. I think most often you'd rather have just played some other card.
I mean, on the upside, the Unmerciful Tormentor in a Ruby aggro deck, Ruby aggro is generally the first deck that runs out of gas. So I mean, you're gonna be playing every single card as soon as you can, and it is the most likely deck to have him be a 4/4 pretty early on and stay a 4/4 pretty regularly afterwards. But I still don't think that's good.
So on that note, though, I think Ruby aggro definitely has potential for him. I think there's another deck which is Ruby Sapphire Tempo with the Voracious Hatchling, which isn't even on the spoiler yet. But we've heard a couple times from Ben about, and I think if you're playing that style deck where it's just like all 1 and 2 drops, Unmerciful Tormentor becomes really good. It's just like the threshold problem, like it makes him a little slower every once in a while, but he has potential to be like a 4/4 most of the game for those type of decks.
Now, Hex Shadow has a wonderful question for us, and that is, would you rather in a mono Ruby aggro run Baby Yeti or Tormentor?
Tormentor.
Same.
Yeah, like if it's those two, yeah, I'm choosing Tormentor, because even if Tormentor's sometimes like that turn 1 it doesn't get in for as much damage, like the rest of the game it does. Like if it has the potential, the most Baby Yeti has to do potential to do is like 2 damage over the course of the game. Unmerciful Tormentor can be a lot better than that.
And I think the big subject of that is the Tormentor is going to force a trade well before the Yeti's going to force a profitable trade. Yeah. So, because your Tormentor can be going in, and your last card in your hand can be a quick action that's also a combat trick. So you could get very profitable that way. But as much as I love the Baby Yeti throwing frozen piles of poo at people, because you can't directly target easily with the Yeti, then that Tormentor just takes it over, and that's actually something from the WoW TCG that's a big difference. Yeah. Is you could directly target and go after specific characters in that game. You could choose to go after the 1/1s and the 2/2s. So you had and that forced a lot more focus on making sure you had something that was beefier. But since all of our attacks are directed at the champion, your Unmerciful Tormentor, is going to be like, oh, I have to block this guy here, something else gets through, or oh, I have to sacrifice my 3/1 Rage 2 guy to the Unmerciful Tormentor, because if I don't, he's going to turn into a 4/4 and eat my face.
If the Yeti was a 1/1 with exhaust to deal 1 damage to target troop or champion, then I would think he was awesome.
Yeah, I get where you're going at that. Like for kind of late game where you're just not able to connect with a troop, it'll get in for that last damage or 2.
Even early on, you can just be hitting the not buffed or the frickin' Wrath Seekers or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a targeted tap do 1 damage to target troop or creature would be another game changer.
Yeah, with that Blood Aura card, I kind of hope we don't see that. Like, I don't want them to do too many of those like strong, dependable cards kind of thing. The other one with Unmerciful Tormentor is if you have 2 guys in play, one's a Tormentor and one's whatever else you have in play, you're swinging with both and you have a combat trick, you're generally going to want to pump like the Wild Growth onto the other troop and then buff the Unmerciful Tormentor since you have no cards in hand, and that way they both connect, or if your opponent removes one of them, at least the remaining card is still strong. Whereas if you buff the Unmerciful Tormentor and the remaining like Savage Raider is still just a 2/1, it's just going to get blocked and it's the end of the game. So that's something to keep in mind at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually a really good combat trick just in and of itself. Throw your last card on something as a trick and then have it buff itself. That's 2 for the price of 1 basically. So generally anyone that's any good at the game will expect it, but you might catch the people off guard sometimes.
Yeah, if they're tired, it's been a long tournament and it's the final round, I wouldn't be too surprised if you're able to pull it off every once in a while.
All right, so Gwaer, did you pick out your favorite Ruby card?
I didn't. I have not gone last for picking yet, so you go ahead and I will pick last.
Part of me really wants to pick Rampaging Tarrasque just because it's a 5 for 8/1 speed crush, but that's just the flavor part of me. It also wants to pick the Yeti, but in all honesty, we just destroyed why Yeti is not as good as the Unmerciful Tormentor. Um, I really like the power of Heat Wave in this one. Just being able to throw on that blanket 2 removal, it's a cheap cost. I see it being kind of the mid game for an aggro deck that just petered out and just got blocked to all hell. They go, oh, well, you think you successfully blocked with all of my troops. Here's a heat wave. Now we're starting at 0. Who do you think's faster, bitch? So I'm going with heat wave.
All right. Let's see. My picks are Sniper of Gwaer. Mainly just because I really like how strong it can be in certain situations.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful card.
Mm-hmm.
And in those same situations, Mancubus will be my second pick. Because I think he is basically the other win condition to play after Sword Trainer more often than not. So
I'm with you there. Yeah, like he does the same thing as Sword Trainer, but on a completely different angle. Like they're definitely, and that's always a good thing to have in decks, is like being able to attack from different angles.
exactly, the Sword Trainer buffs him, and then he basically spins his 4 and gains control of whatever their best card is, and now you have it. So
yeah, one card that's missing from this list too is Inferno. At Gen Con, when we were standing in line waiting to finally play the game, I think I asked a bunch of people, like, pick one, pack one. What's your number one card? And actually, Inferno for a long time was the card I would most likely pick if I had any choice. And it's one of those cards where, like, yeah, pick one, pack one, it's good, but then pick two, pack one. Like, all of a sudden on the second pick, it's dramatically worse if you're not in Ruby, because it was a heavy Ruby commitment on Threshold. But now they upped it to 4 costs. That changes things entirely for me, and it's way worse. But that was one card I was really excited about initially, and it's still decent, but it's not the be all end all.
I actually won several Ruby aggro games by playing Inferno. One time I got 3 Infernos in.
Oh yeah. Goodness.
It is just too strong. I mean, I miss it as 3, but it was ridiculously good.
Yeah, like after a turn 2 Ember Spire Witch, even if you didn't have a 1-drop, was like, yeah, I'm probably gonna win this game.
Yep.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for watching, especially sticking out with us for this 4-hour card breakdown marathon.
It's been longer than that.
Maybe 5 hours.
Yeah.
We started off with Wild, then we jumped up the Blood, and then we perused through Diamond. We're now down here at Ruby. Tomorrow I want to see if I can wrangle these 2 guys back together again and finish out the set. It'll take me a little bit of time to go through here and get it all done, but we'll also get all of this up on YouTube as well. And I have backups of this, and this should also back up on the stream for all you crazy people who like to watch Twitch for 4 hours. But we love you because you stayed with us for like forever, and that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Do y'all have anything y'all want to say to everyone before we release our fans to finally go sleep?
I would just say, yeah, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. That was fun chatting, and yeah, check us all out on the YouTubes there, and follow us on Twitter. Like, Twitter is actually probably the best way to follow any of the fan sites. That's where everybody's communicating more so than the forums or on their individual sites. You can stay up to date pretty easily on what everybody's doing if you watch us on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't actually have a fan site or do anything, but I will be streaming the alpha at twitchtv.com. Nope, that's not it. Twitch.tv/Gwaer, Gwaer. Probably, well, as soon as I get in. So I'm a Grand King, so that will likely be tomorrow or the next day or the next day.
That'll likely be before me and Mokog.
That will definitely before Mokog and Function. So check me out, watch some Hex games. I'm just going to be screwing around most of the time, but it should be good times.
All right. Thanks again for watching. Y'all have a wonderful day. Hell, it's night. Shit. We've been talking for 5 hours. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Sleep well, sleep right, and may Alpha come tomorrow with all haste.